right, and welcome to the Courtenay Turner podcast. I'm your host, Courtenay, and I'm super passionate about moving and thinking. On this show, we are going to dive into all things health, fitness, personal development, lifestyle, and political, sociocultural. I've always been fascinated by people, and I love learning from the experiences and stories of others. This has been a treat for me, and I hope this is enjoyable and useful for you. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or any way that I can make this a better experience for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Hello, welcome to the Courtenay Turner podcast. I am here today with my friend Amie Barsky, who is a women's empowerment coach. How are you doing today, Amie?
I'm doing so great. I'm actually doing more than great because it's my birthday. So,
woo! Oh my God, I didn't know that. Happy birthday. Oh my gosh, I'm so honored that you're spending it with me here. That's amazing.
I'm so excited. You know, I had a very celebratory weekend. Because my birthday falls on a Monday. So I was like, you know what? All good.
That's awesome. Awesome. Mm-hmm. So you are a women's empowerment coach. Tell me a little bit about what you do, how you got into it, because I knew you before you were doing that. So tell me like a little bit about that trajectory and what made you decide to go into it.
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for having me. Super excited to be here. Like Courtenay mentioned, for all who are listening, my name is Amie Barsky, and I'm a women's empowerment coach. I have been facilitating women's workshops workshops in general and master classes and things like that for over 5 years or so. And it happened to, as I was doing my inner work and going through my own healing journey, I really fell in love with this process that's available to subconsciously reprogram your mind, to go in with positive psychology and somatic work and all of the delicious modalities that are available to really retrain your brain and reparent your inner child. And so there are so many women that I have been so blessed to work with in these past few years all over the world, because I travel and teach as well, pre-COVID. And so, it's most of the women that I work with are in a place who are feeling anxious, depressed, overwhelmed, feeling like, what is my life? They're in that like trajectory of their life where maybe like that, not a midlife crisis, but like, what am I doing with my life? What's my purpose? Maybe the kids have left off for college, or maybe they're in a career shift and they're they did what they were told to do by society: go to school, get an education, get a job, have a family, buy a house, like do those steps, and then you'll be happy. And so they did the steps, and then they found that there wasn't happiness at the end of the rainbow. And they're like, well, what the heck? Right? And so a lot of people who are searching for something more to life than what is, because they're unhappy, unfulfilled, it turns out that anxiety and depression and overwhelm is a symptom of inner child wounds, past trauma, belief systems of the subconscious mind that are replaying over and over and over again. And so this is where I found myself on a very similar journey. Oh my gosh, over a decade ago, I started diving into my own inner work because I lost my brother fairly quickly. In 2004, he was diagnosed with cancer on January 1st, and he passed 52 days later. It was just like this big, like, it was really, I couldn't even like I had no concept I couldn't grasp like what was actually happening. Right. And so after I started grieving and like going through things and just asking questions like, what is this about? What is life about? What is death about? Because we also don't celebrate death. We look at it as such a bad thing where, we all have our different opinions about it. However, birth and death life gets to be celebrated. And I noticed that I was not celebrating my life at all. I was definitely playing the victim game for a long time. I was blaming my parents, blaming my childhood, blaming my paycheck, blaming my job, blaming my partner, like for all the crap that was going wrong in my own life. I was looking outside myself, and I was really good at playing the victim. And when I started to recognize that I had the power of free will and choice, which is what I really forgot about. I started working with a life coach, and he really steered me in a good direction to go in. And first was compassion, because it's really easy to fall in that victim space. It really is that energetic victim space, because you can't see past what you know. Your
Right.
paradigm is so narrow. I only know what I know until I know something else. And my paradigm was very narrow. And as I started to express and open up and heal and go through that journey, it really like the lights turned on in my brain. I was like, what? And my heart just started exploding. And I was like, what is this? And I fell in love with the work. And I said, I have got to start sharing this. And at the time, actually, when you and I met, acro yoga was one of the really blessed modalities to help me open up to trust and communication, something I didn't have within myself, to actually ask for what I want and speak up for myself. And I'm a firm believer that everything touches everything. And because I was able to do that within acro yoga community, I was able to start to do that with relationships and with, you know, my in the places I was working in and things like that. And I was like, wow, this is really powerful. So at that time I was teaching Pilates and yoga. And I was doing my own inner work and reading books and all the things. And so I started to infuse like what I was learning in my classes. I just was sharing, hey, this is what I'm going through. Hey, this is what's up for me. And I had a lot of people asking me, are you a life coach? Do you do this for? And I said, well, no. And then the more people asked, I was like, well, wait a minute, you know, and it started showing up a lot. I was like, maybe this should be something that, because it felt really good. And because my body, like soma means body. So my somatic system was really ignited when people would ask that type of question, that I was like, oh, I need to follow this fire. And so I started following the fire and started fueling it with like more master, like I'm in master classes and really getting trauma informed and breath work and a lot of modalities that really allowed me to be who I am today within my own journey to embody. Because, you know, there's people that walk the walk, or that walk the walk, and they really stand powerfully in who they are. And there's people that just talk about it, but don't actually practice it. Right. And so I'm a firm believer to myself. And that's something that my coach teaches me. He's like, you cannot take your clients where you're not willing to go. Right. And so I've done some really deep stuff for the sake of not just my own journey, but so that I can hold that space for clients who are in a really dark place. And so that's kind of how in a nutshell, that's kind of how I got to where I am today.
That's amazing. Well, they say research is me search. So that's
I love that. Yeah. And if it's hysterical, it's historical.
Exactly.
Other favorite. If it's hysterical, if it triggers you and your throat tightens up and your tears in your eyes fill up and your heart starts to pump really fast, it's historical. If you get that hysterical, like, something there it's a gift. It gets to be. Absolutely. Like that. So yeah.
I love what you said about that it's so easy to fall into the victimization, and that wasn't serving you is really what it sounds like you realized. And so, you went on this process and this journey of, true empowerment, so as an antithetical to, or an antidote to, victimization, and then to help other people to walk into that space. And I think that is just it's so beautiful and so powerful, because I think we're in a society currently where it is very trendy to be a victim, and people really do embrace that. You see it all throughout the media. You see there's a lot of messaging for victimhood, and it doesn't really make people happy, right? It might be easier at instant, like at the onset, at first it might seem easier, but it's not. So all this to say, I'm curious what your definition of empowerment is. What does empowerment mean to you, and what does it mean when you work with people?
I love that. That's a really great question. Empowerment to me is, God, I feel like I was on a pageant or something there for a moment. Yeah. But I love the way you said it with such grace and ease of like, what is that to you? Because it really is different for everybody. So for me, it's about owning your voice. It's really about stepping back into your power, because we all have it. Okay. So imagine, I'll use this analogy because I love this analogy. Okay. So an acorn. Courtney, what does an acorn become?
What does an acorn become? A tree?
Yeah. So do you know what kind of tree?
A pine tree, right?
Oak tree.
Oak tree, really?
Yeah. So an acorn becomes an oak tree. So it's a little tiny seedling that gets nestled in the ground,
Yeah.
And then it roots in and then builds its roots and then becomes an oak tree. Now, if you look at an oak tree,
so
you're like,
powerful.
you're
Wow.
like, holy crap, this is a mighty oak tree, right?
Yeah.
And so an acorn is not going to become an orange tree. It's not going to become a flower. It's not going to become a bird. It's going to become an oak tree because this acorn has a blueprint in its seedling that it can only become an oak tree.
Yep.
Well, the human design also has that. When the egg meets the sperm, your soul has a blueprint. And in that blueprint is your design to who you're meant to be. So we'll call that your true self for a moment, right? This is the true self. So this true self is this gorgeous, gorgeous, beautiful white canvas that's so ready to emerge into the world. And then it's born, right? It comes out the women's belly, if it's C-section or, anyway, the person is born into this white canvas. And pure, whole, complete, excited, curious, and ready for the world. And then, so here's this pure person, and all of a sudden, environment, culture, religion, money, communication, blah, 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 trauma, this, that, start to pile on top. So this little seedling becomes less ignited. The light gets dimmed by all the masks that you're now covered by. And you're like, I can't even see where I am anymore, right? And so we'll call that your false self. So we have the true self, and the false self has everything on top of it. And so this true self with this blueprint that is clearly there to evolve wants to come through. So whenever you get that knock on your heart of like, oh, intuition, or oh, gut guidance system, I should go there. That is your true self saying, go this way. And your false self, which is your ego, wants to, no, this is safe over here. This is what we know. This is easy. This is victim. This is, not taking responsibility and all the things. But your soul will almost always win. Almost always, because nothing is absolute. And what I mean by that is you'll maybe feel symptoms of anxiety or depression or overwhelm, or maybe you'll turn towards something as your coping mechanism, like alcohol or drugs or porn or Netflix or social media or something else to numb you out.
Right.
And so your soul is on this journey of the blueprint to have the full experience, and your false self is there hiding, trying to keep you safe. And it's a very natural thing because it's the human design, right? If you look at the primal days, we're meant to stay safe. We hide in the cave from the bears and the lions and the tigers.
Survival. Yeah, exactly.
We still have that. It's unfortunate, but that still exists as well.
But
in the current world, it looks like trauma. Maybe you went through divorce. Maybe you're bullied on the playground. Maybe your teacher told you, you're so stupid. Why didn't you get an A on that? Or your coach said, oh my God, you totally made us lose the baseball game or the whatever, right? And all of a sudden you're just like, oh, and all these things.
Yeah.
And so in that space of feeling like a victim, you start to shut down, or maybe you start to lash out. You go one or the other sometimes.
Right.
And so, empowerment is really about taking back your power, standing up for yourself, and taking ownership of your life. And you can do that by choice, and you can do it in an instant as soon as you become aware. Because in my experience, I can give you a key, and you can take that key and open the door, and that will give you this awareness of like, oh my God, you're so right. When I was a child, this happened, or I had a really bad heartbreak or an experience that you went through. But if you don't actually open the door and then actually walk through it to make a different choice for yourself, then nothing actually changes.
Yeah.
So the empowerment choice is actually to step in and step up and say yes to your blueprint that's truly there for you to fully flourish in this lifetime. We're stuck in survival brain most of the time. So many people walking around in survival brain, just trying to get by. And that's not what we're meant for. We're meant to thrive. We really, really are. So
yeah, absolutely.
That's an empowerment for me.
I love it. It's beautiful. And yeah, it is really easy to know something, but then to do something about it is a completely
yes, to know something and do something, two different paths, right?
Yeah. So I'm curious, you work specifically with women. Do you work with a specific age range, and what made you decide you wanted to work with women specifically?
For my first few years in coaching, I've had male clients. They're amazing. And just something on my heart would kept saying, that's just kind of what kept showing up for me. So I was saying yes to those beautiful opportunities. Yeah. And so almost most of my clients these days are generally women who are in that transitional space. They're like, I know there's something more to life. And I don't know if it's fair to put an age on it, but if I were to look at my client roster of past, present, and previous clients, or yeah, that probably around like 30 to 45, maybe. I think my oldest client was maybe in her mid 50s. So
Okay.
yeah, it fluxes.
The transitional
women-
stage.
Mhm.
That's
Usually.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because they're feeling this feeling of like anxiety or overwhelm, or I'm so frustrated in life and I'm not getting where I want to go. There's
Right.
something blocking them.
Right.
There's this block. And again, that's the symptom that shows up, but underneath that is usually all those other stories. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I don't know how. I'm alone in the world. Yeah. So again, it's about owning your experiences, because when you own the experiences you've had, you get yourself out of victim state.
Right.
Because then you don't say, oh, it happened to me.
No.
It happened for me and through me, with me and as me, as I'm evolving in this blueprint of my seedling growing up to evolve.
Yeah, absolutely. How has the past so the past year and a half has been interesting for a lot of people.
No.
And you were saying like you used to travel and do, more like speaking, that kind of, and groups
Yeah.
and whatnot. It's awesome. So how has this past year and a half shifted a bit, both in terms of the work that you're doing and the modality of that work, and also in the experiences of your clients and, what's coming up for them?
Well, that again, really, really great question. And especially like you said, in this past year and a half, in my experience, first off, as much as this whole experience has been traumatizing to many, many, many people, including myself, there were moments where I fell back into my state of depression, my anxiety. And that's kind of where my symptoms were that. My symptoms were anxiety and depression, cycling, couldn't get myself out. I was in a toxic marriage. I was in toxic jobs, just trying to pay bills. And this was back in 2012. But I could see how in this past year, some of that stuff would come back up, because you felt trapped. I felt trapped.
Sure.
And that feeling of feeling trapped in that toxic relationship and the toxic life that I was living kind of brought up the same triggers of like, oh my God, however, for me, there has been so many gifts in this experience, because thank God for social media. Thank God for platforms like Zoom and other outlets I have clients now all over the world.
Amazing.
All over the world because of this experience. So as much as there's a lot of downside to this experience, there's a lot for me in my experience. It has allowed me to really step more powerfully into who I am and my mission and my message in the world, and to help me make a bigger impact. As far as my clients go, really working and helping them with basic tools around helping through anxiety attacks, panic attacks, working through the depression state of the mind, because it really is it's a state of mind. It's all a state of mind. And it's been really humbling, to say the least, to be able to hold that space for these incredible humans who are reaching out for it. Because I think that alone, to ask for help, is something I struggled with for a long time. Because my story was, I'm alone in the world. No one will ever understand me. No one will ever get what I'm going through. They will never understand it. So I chose to shut down. And it's like when you give yourself that gift of just asking for support, so many things can open up.
Yeah, totally. And when you were saying about like the anxiety and the depression, I think, you talked a little bit about trauma as being one of the things that has such a heavy impact. And we are experiencing a collective trauma, and that's very real. I know that for myself, and I'm an empathic people, which women have a higher tendency to be empathic. They feel it even more. So, that collective.
And it's interesting. I feel like, right now in our culture, trauma is like a buzzword going on.
Yeah.
It feels like a buzzword. So just for those who are listening, to really clarify, what is trauma? Trauma is too much, too fast, too soon. It's an experience. So like COVID, oh my God, shut down, lockdown, stay at home. It's too much, too fast, too soon, where your nervous system doesn't know how to respond to it. And so when you shut down, you get infused by this jolt of emotions, and then you start to make decisions.
Right.
You start to make decisions about yourself. You start to make decisions about the world. You start to make decisions about the experiences that you're in. And that's why, like, I've been really fortunate to work with couples through this experience because they were like at each other's throat, right?
Yeah.
They weren't able to communicate clearly. They weren't able to really hear each other because you're just all up in each other's space. And you're just like, right? And so when you have this sense of trauma, too much, too fast, too soon, your system, your nervous system goes into like freak out mode. You can't, yes, fight or flight, ease or appease. Those are the 4 choices generally. And then it's like, I don't know what to do with myself. And so if you don't have tools to regulate your system stays in hyper mode or hypo mode, which is high or low, out of your tolerance of your window. Like say you have a window here, it's somewhere out of it and you can't get yourself back in. And so that's where I get to share really incredible tools to get yourself back into that space of like parasympathetic. I can breathe, I can self-soothe. A lot of times it's a lot of inner child stuff. It's reparenting because often in partnership, you are looking for specific things in your partner.
Yeah.
You're looking for what you didn't get as a child.
It's called reparation in psychology.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
So
fancy word. Yes.
Yeah. So you actually recreate the dynamics so that you can try and repair. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's very natural. It's very normal. Yes, it's not to say it's good or bad or indifferent, but once you know your attachment style, to understand that about yourself, once you understand the relationship that you're in, and if you can work together with your partner because they probably have the same thing.
Yeah.
So if that partnership can be open to the communication and the healing around that, you're golden. It's when that's not available on both sides that it doesn't.
And why don't you address when you're saying it? I love when you're talking about like too much, too fast, too soon with trauma. Trauma also is, this goes back to when you're talking about like ownership. Trauma, that it's not the same for everyone. So the 2 people can have the exact same experience and one person isn't traumatized by it and the other person is. So it's really about how you internalize that experience. So for one person, it might not be too much, too fast, too soon. It's like, okay, bring it on. For the other person, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't deal, so. And
you are so on point there. That is so, and that also comes back to the window of tolerance, how you learned how to tolerate, because there's healthy stress in life. There's healthy stressors that are really good that we need to navigate through experience, like, conflict and things like that. And if we don't have that information, or if our parents dealt with things differently, then you're exactly right. We could be walking down the street together and you see a snake and you're like, oh my God, that snake's so cute. I'm like,
yeah,
right?
That's me too. Not a snake fan. Snake and spiders are not my thing. Yeah.
Right. So you're absolutely right. Like we can't, and that's why I think it's so important. If you know someone who has experienced trauma, or perhaps they're having a trigger, or an experience when you're with them, to not judge them. To just ask, hey, how can I support you right now? Is there anything I can do for you right now? Don't judge. Oh, what are you afraid of that for? It's like, there's no room for judgment, in my opinion. Like one of my mentors, my coaches said to me, it's a principle that I will do my best to live by for the rest of my life. Make no one wrong for their feelings, for their choices. Never make anyone wrong. See it from their perspective the best you can. Doesn't mean you have to agree.
Right.
But do your best to see it from their eyes, from their window, from their lens, without making them wrong. And you will always find yourself in a hopefully a healthy dynamic of conversation and compassion.
Interesting. I think that's very interesting. I mean, I definitely think people do wrong things that are wrong. And I think, as human beings, we can have a judgment and discernment, but if you're that's not necessarily that you could. I think there's a distinction between like having compassion for somebody and where they've come from and helping them, certainly if somebody in your position, holding the space for them to see their perspective and why they made those choices, and if it was an empowering choice for them and for their loved ones versus whether or not it was the right choice, because we do make mistakes. We are fallible. We're human, right? So yeah. So but I think that is interesting.
But from human to human, it's not, in my opinion, there's your work, there's my work, and there's God's work.
Yeah, sure.
So if you know what I mean, like.
No, I get what you're saying. Now I get where you're going with it. Okay. No, absolutely. And that the judgment is reserved for the higher power.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, for
Like,
sure.
who am I? Because I'm human and I'm not perfect. So who am I to
Right.
judge someone else to make a decision that they had, they got to do that for their, like you said, for
Yeah,
their,
no, yes, I absolutely get that. So this actually is a great lead into my next question. So you are an empowerment coach and you do a lot of very heavy, deep work. What would be a reason why, or why not, why somebody would come see you as opposed to therapy? Can you
I
talk a
love
little
that
bit?
question. Okay. So as a former patient of therapists, I've been to a few. There's
Okay,
amazing things about therapy because talk therapy is very useful.
sure.
And so the difference and again, I can only speak from my experience. The difference between therapy and coaching is generally this. In therapy, which I did for several years, it was talk, right? In coaching, my coaches that I worked with gave me actual tools, modalities, and ways to help me work through my own stuff. So basically, I'm when you work with me, for depending on like what's going on in your life, like I basically work myself out of a job at some point. Like therapists, you just pay them per session and you're just going there for 5 years or 10 years.
Yeah.
But ideally, I want to say, here, get out of the nest, like go, you've got the tools, and I have clients that come back for like a maintenance, like we'll just do like a tune up or maybe something, traumatic came up and they need to work through it. But ideally, like you're leaving with tools that you can use for the rest of your life. Like I have stuff in my toolbox right now from what I've been through and now what I've mastered as a coach, like that I get to use anytime I want. And so I think, it depends on your level of evolution too, because I also am a believer of like, I'll probably have a coach for the rest of my life to some degree or another. Maybe I go through like 3 months out of the year and I go and I, get myself back and just fired up. It depends on, what's happening in life. But ideally, if you want a quantum leap, which is, a big impact in a short amount of time, do coaching. If you want talk therapy, awesome, do it. There's no right or wrong.
Sure.
You know? So
It's
that's
different
my
folks.
distinction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like if you want to do deep inner work, get coaching. If you really want to move through the limiting beliefs that are in your mind, if you want to reprogram your mind, if you want to get in touch with your emotions, if you want to clear out the past of why do I keep attracting the same people over and over, all I want is a healthy relationship and I keep attracting can I say assholes, jerks, or I keep attracting people or women who whatever, and it's not healthy. There's something cyclical there that you can clearly see the pattern. Sure. Generally, therapy is not going to help you because they're not going to help you see why you're making the choices you're making. They're not going to help you reprogram the brain. They're just going to talk about it. So,
right.
There's that.
Yeah. I very much experienced that. I always say with therapy, I get stuck in like analysis paralysis.
Yes, because you're always like, what? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So not to say that there isn't a time and place for therapy, and for certain people that it's the best place for them. But for some of us who are very analytical and who are really good talkers, I can get caught in that cycle for a long time. And then it's not productive. You're not taking action. And it sounds like that's what you really guide people through.
Because what happens is like, so your emotions have two phases, right? There's the release phase and there's the recycle phase. And so often when you start to see, like, say you start to get upset about something and something triggers you. Well, first off, the trigger is a treasure. It's right there for you to look at and it's medicine. And so like open the door and see what's there. And so often we might open the door and peek inside. So we let the emotion come up a little bit. And then we get mad at ourselves. Why am I still feeling this way? Why aren't I over that breakup? Why didn't I get that raise? And so the emotion gets there, but it doesn't get fully released because the inner critic or the Judge Judy or the something in the mind starts to, we suppress it back down.
Right.
So if you actually give yourself this is what I do with my clients, a somatic release, not just the crying, but other ways to release it from your physical being, then you'll find that because okay, so here's the interesting part. You might know this, but your brain is so powerful. Your brain can delete, distort, and disorganize and reorganize your thoughts over and over and over again. However, your physical body is a living library of every experience.
The body
there you go, issues in the tissues, right? And so when you give yourself a somatic release, which is a physical thing that happens, then you can start to move that energy through the body so it doesn't show up.
Yeah.
It starts to get smaller and smaller and smaller until it's fully dissolved. Like I can sit here and talk about my rape experience when I was 19 at a fraternity without crying and breaking down and getting emotionally triggered by the experience, because I've done my healing work around it.
Sure.
I can talk about my divorce and how there was abuse in that relationship emotionally, and I can talk about my childhood and how there was physical abuse in my household and not have this big emotional breakdown, because I've done my inner healing and I've come to a space of acceptance that this is the experiences that my soul was on the journey and signed up for in the blueprint, and here I am today speaking into it so that I can help others get through theirs.
Oh, I love that. That's really beautiful. Yeah. Totally. So this is a little tidbit that I want to share with you. You probably know this already, but yeah, so it's totally related to that. As an actress, there's lots of different techniques for acting, and I did that for a long time. And if I had to do a scene where, certainly if I had to cry or laugh, those are two really difficult things to reenact. They really are. People think, like, when I say that about laughing, but to do a genuine, like, full body laugh, like, that's actually not easy to fake. And when you do, people know, the audience can feel that, so what I would do, though, because we do carry so many memories in our muscles, I would force myself to, like, make the facial expressions like I'm gonna laugh, like, and I would start to feel like something was funny, like I would feel that joy bubble up. And I would do the opposite. Like if I had to cry, I would just, make that face, and I would literally get sad and tears would start to fall. So those two are, it's very related, because it shows how much, we store in our muscles, the muscle memory. And then the one other thing, and this is also an acting related story. I played Helen Keller on stage in New York, and for most actors, it's a really difficult exercise of sensory deprivation to really imagine what that's like. For me, it was allowing myself to relive the trauma, because I spent so much of my childhood with a patch over my sighted eye, and I didn't get hearing aids till I was almost 6 years old, right? So I was essentially blind and deaf every other day of my childhood. And I've spent so much of my life, suppressing that. I'm fine, I'm okay, and I mean, it's just not, you don't want to walk around with that, like, holding that, that's just heavy, I've done so much to overcome and to, to function, and I'm really proud of that. And so why am I going to walk around holding on to that, but to allow myself to go there and to be that vulnerable, to show those parts of myself, they were parts of my, of my trauma, of my traumatic childhood. And there were parts of the process where I would have to throw tantrums. Helen Keller was always throwing tantrums, and I was too as a kid. And so, and it was so incredibly cathartic. That was better than any therapy, and I was in
You
therapy.
gave yourself some somatic releases. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up, because it was, I can really relate to it. It was so powerful, and I was in therapy at the time, and that was more like productive for me, because I am also a very kinesthetic person,
Did you tell your therapist that? Did you tell your therapist, hey, look, I just had this thing, can we do that again in therapy?
I did, actually. I told her, and she I mean, she understood, though, because she knew I was a kinesthetic person, and she also understood the somatic release, she and also, I mean, we talked so much about it that it was like, okay, that she was respectful.
What I want to share is that it's unfortunate when you go to school to become a therapist, you are a licensed therapist to only do what you are licensed to. You can't bring in any modalities. Even if you learn them, you cannot bring them into session under the state of contractual whatever state you're in, because every state's different. But you can only do what you're licensed to do. Even if you learn, I'm a master at breathwork, I'm a master at somatic release, it doesn't matter. If you are a practicing licensed therapist, you cannot bring those modalities into your sessions with clients.
That's very interesting and really unfortunate. Yeah, because there are so many, and different people respond to different things. Like there's like art therapy can be tremendously powerful.
Voice therapy,
voice therapy, and so here, this is another question for you that I'm really curious about, because for me, personally, part of that whole journey, a lot of what I was struggling with was owning voice. It was really, really hard for me. I remember my acting teacher used to make me do this exercise where I would have to say, I have a right to be angry, because I couldn't express anger in any scene. I would go to crying. I would go to sadness, to tears, but I had a really hard time. Yeah. So I'm really curious, when you're working with people and owning their voice, and what are some really common struggles and blocks you see with?
Well, at first I want to speak into kind of like why that happens.
Yeah,
It happens more for women than men.
it does.
We turn towards sadness versus anger because we feel that anger is unacceptable and it's scary. And sometimes it's scary for men too.
Sure.
And so with that being said, I want to also kind of just rewind just a tiny bit when you said, as a child, I was strong. I was fine. I put the patch on. I just said I was fine. And that was you. There's this beautiful balance between owning your feelings and allowing them and then dismissing them, whether they were dismissed by yourself or by somebody else. And so often women, and women especially, like, be strong, don't cry, bucker up, all the things, we're told to dismiss our feelings. We not told, we're taught. We're taught to dismiss our feelings. We're taught that it's not okay to cry. And now we'll flip it. It's more for boys than it is for girls. There's a really powerful book called How to Improve Your Marriage Without Talking About It. How to Improve Your Marriage Without Talking About It. And it's about understanding the shame that men carry and the anxiety that women carry. And if you look at babies, there's a whole study around babies. You can look at a baby girl and she'll just be like, right? And she just can stare and gaze because it's comfortable. If you do that to a boy, he'll be in it for a moment and then he'll look away. He'll close his eyes. It's something.
Cool biology.
Right? Thank you, biology. Right? And so my point is this: we come to a space and place where the pent up anger is like a volcano and it just wants to explode. And that's where you get to give yourself that permission. Like I teach my clients how to have a safe tantrum, how to have a safe anger release process. And what I mean by safe is they feel safe to do so in their own bodies. Right. And for some, it's starting out very small, because if I say, hey, go do a primal scream, and they can't tap into that voice because maybe they were told not to scream as a kid, or maybe they were so much surrounded by screaming that they said, I'm never going to scream. I'm never going to shout. I'm never going to argue. Right. So depending again, what their background is, where they come from. So and
their own personal biology and, their makeup, their psychology, all of that. Yeah.
All of it. So, So, we have these emotions and they are there to be expressed. And we live in a culture where it's not safe to express your emotions. Yeah. And so, just working with individuals who are feeling stuck in owning their voice, it's really about healing the inner child and asking that inner child where like we can tap into different ways of going in and asking, like, there's parts work. Parts work is like, we have a part, when you said, oh, a part of me wants to go out and go to the party, and a part of me just hang out on the couch and relax and watch Netflix. Notice I'm saying the word part, because there are two different places in your brain that are having a conversation in your living room of what to do. And when those two parts are talking, your higher self is not talking. So how can I tap into my higher self of what I truly want and let my parts take a break and sit in the chorus? They're there, they're part of life. And when you can accept the parts are there, then you can find an easier way to go, okay, what is really true for me? Can I sit in a moment and be with my breath and be like, what do I really want to do? And you can just ask your whole self, your perfect and whole, yet not done yet self, right? Because we're always on that journey. And so when it comes to emotions, I'm feeling really angry. Well, let your angry self be heard. Let your angry self come through, so the emotion, again, release or recycle. Where do you want to put it? Let's release it all the way, so that it's finally heard and seen and exposed in a healthy way to go, okay, cool. Now I feel better. Right. I feel safe. Yeah. A lot of women don't feel safe in their own skin. We don't feel safe and comfortable to actually speak up for ourselves. And so healing that inner child and letting her know that she is safe and being with it and really allowing her to share more and more and more of what is really present for you. And that comes with like learning nonviolent communication is one of my favorite tools to use, because it takes away the blame and the pointing the finger, you know? And so it's really about understanding how to communicate with yourself and accept all aspects and all parts of yourself, and then being able to share that with people that are important to you in your life.
Amazing. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Did I answer the question? I'm not sure.
Yeah. So the question was if there were blocks that come up that you see that are common for people and especially women in owning their voice.
I think the common block is usually in relationship. I don't know how to ask my partner what I need. I don't know how to express to my partner what's important to me.
Right.
I'm afraid they're going to leave me. I'm afraid of abandonment. I'm afraid they're not going to understand me.
Yeah.
And so giving them the tools and the learnings and the teachings to clear out where that came from first off, and then declaring something new for themselves going forward. Like, what do you really want for yourself, and start to practice that. And I say the word practice because it's so important. It's like saying, Courtenay, when you started acro yoga, when you very first started, were you as good as you are now?
No. Well, no. I haven't done it in a while, so maybe, but
right. But my point is this: it takes practice. With anything, it takes practice. So don't expect to practice something one time and then expect it to like everything to, just be in unicorns and rainbow land, right? It does practice. And that's why you get to really have so much compassion with yourself as you're moving through it. And it does get easier with practice. And so it's never to say that, first off, there's never like, oh, I have to fix myself, I'm broken. No one is ever broken. I'm not broken. You're not broken. I don't care what you've been through in life. You are not broken. You might be a little bent. You might have a couple bruises, a couple scars, but you are not broken. So there's never something to fix. And that's really important that we understand that as humans, that we're not broken. Because I know after my rape, I thought I was broken. I'm like, no one will ever love me again. No one will ever understand this. Like I felt so broken and shamed and riddled with guilt. Right. And so to really understand that there is no such thing as broken, And so my point is that when you practice it, it's never to say that it's not going to happen again, or it's not going to get triggered again, and you're not going to feel that way again. But now you have tools and you know how to move through it. You understand where the wound is coming from.
Right.
So and I'll give you an example, kind of a funny example. Okay. So I'm in the kitchen with a friend of mine, and there's they have like the container muffins in the plastic container, right? And there's one muffin left. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know about you, but my favorite part of the muffin is the top of the muffin, not the bottom, like the top of the muffin, right? Yeah. And so my friend is in the kitchen, he's standing there, and my other friend is
pointless, by the way. Anybody who disagrees is wrong.
That is my point. Oh my God, Courtenay, that's my point. So I've got two male friends in the kitchen. Now, at this time, I was very uncomfortable around men. I wasn't feeling safe around men. I was really, just a lot of stuff was coming out for me. And anyway, so my one friend said to me, hey, do you want to share the muffin? And as a joke, I said, sure, but I'll take the top and you can have the bottom. My other friend said, Amie, that is so selfish. Oh my God, that's so, and he said it kind of like in a sarcastic, joking manner, because that's his personality. Courtenay, hysterical, too much, too fast, too soon. My whole body went, my heart was pounding, my throat closed up, my eyes welled up in tears. And I just stood there in front of the package, and I was like, and I didn't want to bring it to them because I knew it was my stuff. I was in the beginnings of my inner healing. And I was like, oh my God, my body was like shaking. I took a deep breath. I said, guys, I'll be right back. And I walked away. And I had to come to a space of getting my sympathetic system that was freaking out, come back to a place of calm, regulation, basically. And I was like, what was that? So he triggered because he said the words that my mom used to say when I was a kid. Yeah. When I was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, my mom would sometimes say, you're so selfish. Stop being so selfish. Share with your brother, share with your sister. And I was like, here I am, this 40-something-year-old woman going, like having, but that's how quick we know it's trauma. When something is triggered that fast, And I could go in and go, okay, what is this? Instead of going through a big yelling match with him, saying, how dare you, and having a fight with him, I took ownership. I took a moment. I removed myself out of the experience, and I got to self-soothe and sit with it and understand what my responsibility was in my own healing.
And you took ownership of it. So
and let me tell you, it was at that time, it was freaking hard. It was really hard.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie. I had to I didn't talk to him for a couple of days as I was processing and I was in my stuff. Because sometimes when you have trauma from such a young age and it happened over and over and over again, it'll take like 4 to 6 days to come back to regulation. To get your body back to a regulated state, it can take up to 6 days sometimes.
Physiologically, not just emotionally.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. And that's really interesting. I very much can relate to that. The selfish was very much a buzz in my family as well. My mom, my sister still pull that, although I don't put up with that one anymore. But I used to, and it wasn't that long ago where that would send me into very much a the same kind of sympathetic response that you had. I would get into that and I would engage, and it's a very toxic.
Like, yes.
Yep. And now
once you have two people in survival brain, no one can hear anybody. It doesn't matter. You can say it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
It's not productive at all.
And that's where you get to learn to set healthy boundaries.
Yep.
And exactly. And that's why I said, I got to step away for a moment. I'll be back. And I removed myself.
Yeah. No, I definitely know that now, but it wasn't that long ago where I would fall right into it. I'm like, this is a trap. Not falling for it. It's like the cheese is right there, and then the thing comes smack on my head. Yeah. But it's interesting, and I think that is interesting. I think women are much more susceptible to that. Not that men aren't. You can pull that. There are a lot of men who would be triggered by that as well, but I think it is more common for women, and so it's why it's one of those buttons that people push, because they know that they can manipulate people that way. Yeah.
And I think it's powerful. Once you can understand it's your birthright to own your voice and to own your choice and the power of free will, when you understand it is your birthright, man, woman, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It is your birthright to speak up and say, this is how I'm feeling. Now, how you say it is a different story. So be mindful of how you say it. However, it is so important that you don't dismiss your own emotions. And it's interesting. This just came up for me right now. Because I was doing some healing around my mom and our relationship, and my mom passed away 1.5 years ago. And I was sharing some stuff with my coach, and I said, because my healed higher self wanted to be like, well, she's my mom and I love her. And she's like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But your 7-year-old self gets to be heard and gets to be expressed now. And so in session, I was allowing my 7-year-old to come forward so that she felt completely seen and heard and supported. Regardless of my relationship with my mom now, like I was allowed to say in that moment, mom, you were a shitty mom in that moment. You didn't stand up for me. I didn't, all the things to help me move through and heal that part of me, that 7-year-old that was feeling so left alone and abandoned. Yeah. And so it's not about like, oh, well, she's my mom. You get to heal, and you get to feel and express those emotions in that space, because that 7-year-old doesn't understand, and that's okay. That 7-year-old doesn't have the emotional intelligence that you do now to say, well, it's okay. She's my mom. She did the best she could. Yes, she did. And kind of no, she didn't. In that moment, there was some that happened.
She's human, and she makes mistakes, and she has all of her issues and baggage and things. And she's just doing the best she can with what she has. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it might not have been enough for you in that moment. So
exactly. And so allowing, now we go back, and that's about a lot of that reparenting is really looking at that without any guilt or shame, just saying, I felt this way at 9 years old. I felt this way when I was 16, whatever it was, and allow those feelings, period, without zero judgment, without any guilt or shame.
Yeah. And I love that you said we have a birthright to free will. That is absolutely right. Free will is tantamount. Yeah. That's been very much kind of my if I drill nothing else into people this past year and a half, and with this podcast, it is to take ownership of your free will. We are all autonomous sovereign beings with free will, and that is, we have to exercise it. It is really, really important. So yeah, that's,
I love that.
Very passionate about that.
I love that you're passionate about it, because this is allowing you to follow your blueprint of like, this is on my soul right now, and we're doing it. It's happening.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think it is really, pun intended, but it's freeing for people, because when you exercise your free will, you take on responsibility. So that's a question I'd love to ask you, actually. So when you're working with, your message is to empower, right? So what do you feel that the relationship between, you talked a little bit about the victimhood and getting out of that. What do you feel the relationship between responsibility and healing and empowerment is?
So one thing I like to say is that, first off, whatever happens in regards to like childhood, growing up, decisions and stuff like that, a lot of it, like you mentioned, your parents are holding their baggage and their lineage and all the stuff from behind, right? So first off, a lot of it's not your fault. A lot of the stuff may not be your fault. However, it is your responsibility to take back your ownership, to take back your free will, to take back your sovereignty. And so to marry that is to say, yeah, you have the power within. You've got to come to a place of acceptance. You get to come to a place of acceptance. Yeah. And when you come to a place of acceptance, you come to that place of freedom that you just spoke about. And in that freedom creates space. And so if we're talking about, we're back to the somatic system in the body and how it's the living library and issues in the tissues. And what was the phrase you said again?
Which phrase?
It was like, I said issues in the tissues, the body's a living library, and you said something that was a really good one. It was another phrase.
Oh no, I don't know.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was really good. My point is this: when you have the mental awareness, right? Because you can clear out the mind and retrain the brain, and then you take yourself into the somatic releases of the emotions and the trauma. You make space in the physical body. Right. Because if you're calling in something really powerful for yourself, if you want a bigger life, a better relationship, a better job, a better, health, whatever it is that you're calling in a bigger life. Well, how can a body that's stored with all this stuff from the past have any space to bring in a bigger life? It can't. There's no, it's not like ice cream. It doesn't go in between the crevices, right?
Right.
It doesn't work that way. So when you clear out the old crap, you make space for the bigger life you actually want.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think for a lot of people, when we were talking about victimhood, I think victimhood isn't actually easier, but I think people have the, delusion that it is, because they get to shirk the responsibility if they're a victim. But I think I'm curious about, I think a lot of people, because they're under that misconception, they're afraid of taking a look at things. They're afraid of taking on the responsibility. They're afraid of free agency, because then they don't, with great power comes great responsibility. And a lot of people, the responsibility isn't the fun part for most people. Mm-hmm. So what are some suggestions you have for people to find that courage to start doing some of this work, to find a coach like you? Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting. Have you ever heard of the drama triangle?
I don't think I have.
So in the drama triangle, almost always, and again, nothing is ever absolute. That's why I use the word almost always. There is the villain, the victim, and the hero. Mm-hmm. And almost always one person in any conversation is playing one of those parts. Right. So you get to see which part are you playing. Am I playing the victim, the villain, or the hero? And you can Google it. There's science behind this. It's a really cool concept.
Yeah, I've never heard it called the trauma hero, but
the drama triangle. Yeah. It's really cool.
I'm familiar with the victim hero.
Yeah. So there's so much information within that itself. I'm like, wow, I've been really showing up as a hero, trying to save everyone, trying to fix everything. And that was me for a long time. I wanted to fix my family. Everyone was effed up, and I'm trying to fix everything. And it wasn't healthy. Because
No.
then I wasn't giving myself space and place to heal with, and
And
bring my
not empowering them.
yeah.
Because it's enabling. You're always there to save the day.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And so, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
The triangle with the hero and the.
So when you understand yourself, and then there's developmental stages in life that we go through, and you might be familiar with these, like the 5 personality patterns and Erickson's theory.
Yeah.
So if you didn't develop, and I can't remember the exact stage, so forgive me, but there's a stage in life in our youth where we develop the skills to trust our own knowing, and to break it down into your gut. Your gut says grab a sweater, it's going to be cold tonight. Your gut says grab a protein bar. Your gut says grab the umbrella, right? That's your intuition. Yeah. Now, if you would ask me what my intuition was, 5 years ago, I'd be like, what the hell is that? Like, I didn't understand the language. Excuse me. So listening to your gut, the instinctual GPS that you have in your system. Some of us aren't taught in the Erickson's theory, in the stages of life. We weren't taught that that's a skill set to listen to yourself, because perhaps there was someone always in your space saying, do that. So authority took over, and you never developed your own intuition or your own trust or your own GPS to go, oh yeah, I want to try that, or I want to go for that. Right. And the internal guidance system never got infused with encouragement or positivity. And so now as an adult, you're questioning every choice you make. Oh, should I do that? Should I do that? And there's all this uncertainty because that skill, that stage of life wasn't fully developed. So that's another thing I take clients through. Like, what stages in life don't have the full development that's showing up in your adult life now, that you keep repeating the same stuff over and over and you're not happy?
Yeah. And it is really interesting to see how many adults do not have, are not in touch with their intuition at all today.
Oh my God. We're all little kids and stuck in grown-up bodies. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
If you get a chance.
Yeah.
Google. It was one of the art pieces at Burning Man. It's the most beautiful art pieces I've ever seen in my entire life. It's a giant sculpture at Burning Man. Okay. And I think if you can just Google like inner child Burning Man, and it's 2 adults, like back to back, like mad at each other, and they're leaning against, but they're mad at each other and they're angry. And then, and it's like, it almost looks like a cage, like it's made out of wood or something. It's almost like a cage. And then these 2 adults are facing opposite direction, mad at each other, hunched over, sitting on the ground, their knees at their chest. And these 2 inner little children inside the structure are facing each other, putting their hands next to, like putting their hands up to hold each other. Wow. It's so powerful because these 2 adults are so mad at each other, but these 2 little kids are just trying to say, I love you. I love you. Oh. And that's what most of us, and I say us because I'm included, sure. We are children in these adult bodies who are just wanting to be heard and seen and held and loved and all the things that we want.
Yeah. Wow. Really, really beautiful. And yeah, so true. So true.
So true.
So if you had like maybe a handful of things that you would recommend to people who are starting to do this kind of work for themselves, certainly find a coach would be, in there, but but what are some kind of, I think sometimes before people can even take that leap, they need to get themselves to a place where they're ready to make that, to start that journey. So what are some kind of, do you have any suggestions for people?
That's a good question. I mean, honestly, if there's a calling on your heart, that alone is a signal. Like if you're even a little bit curious, just get on a conversation with me or somebody that you feel a connection with, because there's a ton of amazing coaches in the world right now, amazing coaches who have incredible hearts and skill sets to help you. So if you have a tiny little ember saying, I'm curious, almost every one of us offer like a 45-minute just conversation just to see what it's about, all the things. Because honestly, you can read books, you can go to workshops, and those are all great. That's what I did. Sometimes start there. Start at a really powerful breath workshop. Start at a powerful self-development, like self-love nurturing workshop, and see what's there for you. Maybe like an online workshop or something like that. Because if you find yourself keep craving more, then you know that you're like being guided, your intuition, your gut's like, oh yeah, let's keep going. But what I do want to preface is that just be mindful that you're not putting a band-aid on something, because it's really easy to get that hit. You're like, oh, that workshop was so good, I'm fixed for the rest of my life. And the
Right.
next thing you know, a year goes by and you're running into the same exact issue again. And you're like, I had this, I thought I worked through this. Sometimes when you go to those quick one and done workshops or something, or you read that book, you're
Right.
not getting to the deepest parts where you're actually healing the wound. You're putting a band-aid on it. You're putting a temporary fix on it.
Right.
And so just start to notice your patterns. There's a good one. Start to observe your thoughts. What do you spend your day thinking about? And this is okay. Here's a fun tool I'll give you all to walk away with. Set yourself an alarm in your phone 3 times a day.
Mm-hmm.
And in that alarm, maybe it's like at, we'll say like 12 noon, say 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock. Because in the morning, okay, so here's another tool. In the morning, your brain is the most malleable. Your brain is the most open and receptive to infinite possibilities. This is neuroscience 101. You can go hang out with your friends. One-on-one.
You're to the subconscious when you're waking up and you're doing
exactly. You're moving from melatonin to serotonin, right? Unconsciousness to consciousness. You're moving back in. And so you're at the most pure state of being because you're not interrupted by phones and kids and jobs and calls and all the things. You're just there in your space. And that is the perfect time to spend some moments, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, to just go in and create your new reality. Go in and dream big, and not only dream and visualize, but go through the 5 senses. What does it taste like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? What does it smell like? Because you can play with your mind all day, but if you don't tap into the viscerals of the human experience, and start to act as if it already is. Act as if you already have that partnership that you're calling in. Act as if that job is already, it already is. Because if you already thought of it, it's in your vortex. It's in your energy field. It just hasn't become your reality yet. Why hasn't it become your reality? Something is blocking it. Something in your belief system is standing in your way. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve it. All the things. But if you can start tapping into the neuroscience of the new neural pathways in the morning, you will start to change the visceral feelings. You'll wake up in a different energy. And then, so the alarms so now we're in it. Okay. So you get yourself out of bed, you're in this great state. You go to the mirror, you say, I love you, you're amazing. And you talk to your inner child and you pump yourself up, you give yourself a high five, and you're on with your day. Next thing you know, your day is like, pew, pew, all these things are coming at you. And now 12 noon, your alarm goes off, and you check in. Where have I been for the past 2 hours? In my mind, where have I been? I've been stressed about bills. I've been stressed about my partnership. Been stressed about the kids. I haven't got my workout in yet, right? So at noon, you get to shift it back into the state you created in the morning.
Right.
And so you get yourself back in state. Back in state is in I'm safe, I'm here, I'm alive, I'm well, and I'm moving through and reconnecting to what I want in my life, what I'm calling in. You start to embody it. Again, 5 senses.
Right.
Now, how long can you stay in that space? Maybe this time it lasts an hour. So now your alarm goes off at 3. And you go, wow, where am I? Where's my mind been? Oh, I stayed in that space for a good hour or so. But yeah, the last hour and a half, I've been kind of drifting back into my old way. And you reignite it again, because it's not only setting the neural pathway, it's setting the somatic system as well. Breathe, shake it out, come to a place of letting it in. And then again, you check in again at 6 o'clock. So you're getting these check-ins throughout the day instead of waiting to the end of the day. And at the end of the day, if you decide to kind of assess your day, you can freaking high five yourself for all the awesome check-ins that you've had. Otherwise, you're like, my day was shitty. I had such a hard day. And you let your whole day spiral because something cut you off, or the email didn't go through, or the technology didn't work. And all of a sudden, everything spiraled into a shit show of chaos. Right? And so you get to stop the shit show as fast as possible. And you get to reassess and get back into that state, that higher state of being.
Right. And you're also manifesting what you want. You're literally creating it through the visualizations, which you know how powerful that is. I'm curious, you mentioned you mentioned in terms of workshops, and you mentioned self-love. So that's a very trendy buzz, thing right now. I'm curious your thoughts on it, like self-love, because I see the look on your face, so I'll elaborate if that wasn't clear. So I think for me personally, I feel like human beings we come into this world like we're designed to love ourselves. I mean, because as we talked about from the beginning, we were talking about survival, right? We put ourselves first. We are selfish, and I don't mean that pejoratively. I mean that from like we need to take care of ourselves in order. We can't take care of others until we have taken care of ourselves. So and these are biological survival mechanisms. We are designed to love who we are. They've actually even done these surveys where they'll give like, you can trade your whatever, like list your 5 biggest problems, and you can trade with somebody else of their 5 biggest problems. It's like almost everybody chooses they're going to keep their problems. Yeah.
I can totally see why.
Yeah, because they're yours, you know how to deal with them. You're comfortable, familiar, that doesn't mean we shouldn't try to fix our problems, but that's just our nature. And so, yeah, we already love ourselves. So I think there's this movement, like to where, because like I said, it's very trendy, self-love, and I feel like it's not actually empowering. I think it's it's self-indulgent, it's victimization, it's like it can be obfuscation of responsibility. That to me is not self-love.
I agree.
Yeah, so I think people aren't necessarily all that clear on what self-love actually really means, and that it's not something. I'm not saying none of us getting caught up in states of where we have times where we're, feeling, where we're not kind to ourselves, and we all do that, that's also very human. But I think that, it is more natural to love ourselves than not to. And I don't know that it's so much that we need to teach ourselves to love ourselves. I think it's more like we need to empower ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. And I think that maybe the distinction is, especially for women, is so many women devote themselves to their spouse and their children that they forget to nourish themselves. And so for that's something when I'm working with a client who is learning to fill up her own cup again, learning to self-nurture, self-soothe. Really, I'm not talking about go shop and go get your nails done. That's all nice too. Like retail therapy.
We need those too.
But it's a band-aid, right? Those are band-aids. Those are quick fixes. Self-love is starting to accept all aspects of yourself. Self-love is accepting the fact that maybe you're getting older and now you have gray hair and pimples and wrinkles and cellulite and all the judgments that we put on ourselves. Self-love is coming to an acceptance of what was from your past, so you can live in your present and not from your past. Self-love is giving you the tools to heal your inner child, to heal the emotional trauma that you're carrying around, to come to a place where you can be so compassionate with yourself that you can being so compassionate with yourself bleeds out or ripples out into others. When I show up to a conversation with my partner and I'm coming at it with blazing guns, I'm not going to get anywhere. Right. But if I am so in such a state of awareness around my own needs and what's important to me, that I can come to him from a place of compassion and a place of love, period, because that's what we're born from and made of. Yeah. And it almost is always reciprocated or received with like, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that with me. I had no idea you felt that way. Right. But if I start going, you blame, you didn't do the dishes, or whatever, you know what I mean? So self-love is taking radical responsibility for your own stuff. Self-love is nurturing from the inside out. There's 2 ways to live this game called life. 2 ways, the inside out game and the outside in game. So if I keep looking outside myself for validation, approval, attention, affection, all the things, if I keep looking for it outside myself, I will always feel not enough. I will almost always feel like I'm not getting what I want and I'm unfulfilled. Right. But if I start to play the inside out game and I give myself all the things that I need, so then all the stuff that does come external is cherry on top. Cherry on top. I love that. So taking radical responsibility for yourself, all of you, all aspects of you, your anger, your rage, your tears, your joy, your happiness, your passion, your hobbies, your quirks. Like I do weird shit. I'm a weird person. Like I only write with pencil weird. Like I don't like to write with pens.
I actually prefer pencils. Yeah.
Right? I don't like to eat with a spoon, like ice cream. I eat it with a fork, like weird stuff. But I'm okay with that. Like I used to judge myself, like, what's wrong with me? Why do I do these weird? I don't know. I'm okay with that. Like I've taken responsibility for this is who I am. And here's the power move. If you don't like who you are, change it.
Yes. Yeah.
Stop with this. Oh, I'm a Leo. No, don't blame your sign or your birth or don't blame your religion. Don't blame anything outside yourself for being a jerk or a bitch or however you're showing up. Mm-hmm. I had someone actually say that. Well, I'm just like that because I'm a Leo. Do you like being, now that's a different, do you like being like that? That's okay. If you say, I approve of me, that's one thing.
Right.
Like if I approve of me, then that's different. But if I don't like how I'm showing up in the world, if I don't like XYZ about myself, I get to change it.
Yeah.
I get to decide. Personal, at Joe Dispenza, personality, personal reality.
I love that. Yeah.
It's your personal reality. You get to decide. No one else gets to decide but you. And that's the joy in this game called life.
Yeah.
There are no rules. No one gave you rules.
No manual.
There's no manual, right? Exactly. So
yeah. So just a total side note. So do you have to eat it really quickly before it melts? Because you need a fork.
No.
You just let it melt.
Especially if there's like cake and ice cream, I have to have a fork.
Okay, well that I actually understand.
Yeah, ice cream. Yeah, a little bit of both. Yeah, I do weird things. Yeah.
It's okay. I was just curious. The curious part, that's my quirk. I'm curious about everything. I'm like, wait, how does that actually work?
Yeah. I don't know. Well, sometimes I also get the ice cream with the stuff in it, like brownies or cookies, like that. Like, oh, this needs a fork.
Well, that definitely needs a fork for sure. Without a doubt. Anybody who thinks that's wrong. No, I'm just kidding. So, well, this has been amazing. Do you have definitely tell everybody where they can find you? Do you have anything you want to add or leave us with? Or
oh my gosh. Well, first, thank you again for having me. This was so much fun. And I hope y'all who are listening found some insight and value here. And if you want to find me, I'm always on Instagram. Always posting there, YouTube once in a while, but really Instagram is my biggest platform right now. And of course, you can always just reach out to me and shoot me a DM within Instagram as well if you want to just learn more or just connect more. Bottom line is I'm here to connect with other humans and help as best I can. My ultimate heart's calling is to be of service, and whatever that might look like. And so, yeah, I would just love to connect with each and every single one of you who are listening right now. And I'm actually starting a women's group coaching program in September. So I don't know when this is going to be out in the world, Courtney. But at the end of September, we're launching a group space. So women coming together to support women in community. And of course, I will be leading and guiding breathwork and coaching facilities or practices on the other end of it. And it's going to be so much fun. And I'm going to keep it very intimate because I don't want it to be a large group. And so if that's something you're like, wow, I'd love to experience that. Let's get on a call and just have a conversation to see if it's a good fit, because it's really about that energy, that synergy of like, yeah, I've got what you need. You got, it's that juiciness that really comes alive on those calls. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, there's all kinds of content on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way. It's super fun to just be able to deliver every day. So
awesome. Well, I will post the link to your handle, and definitely everyone should go. She's got amazing content, and definitely reach out if you're. The September. That sounds amazing. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So that enrollment is open now. So try and jump in now if you're interested, because we're gonna get started.
And where would they connect with you on that? Would they?
Instagram. They can just DM me, just direct message to my DM and say women's group coaching, or just say, hey, I met you on Courtney's podcast. Like, however. I don't have someone else handling my stuff because I want it to be a personal experience. So you're not going to get some bot responding or some, it's just, it'll be me.
That's actually a great thing.
Human contact.
I love it. That's great to share that though, because with a lot of people you don't know. And that makes it a little like hesitant because you're like, I don't know if I want to be vulnerable and share. I don't know who I'm talking to on the other end. So that's great that they know. I mean, there's nothing wrong with people. Some people do have assistants and whatnot. It's good for people to know that they're getting you. So
but that's the space and place where I check all of my messages and I do my best to respond as soon as possible. And so just know that you're in good hands.
Yeah, you absolutely, without a doubt. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.